All right, so this is our little live stream hangout that we do every Monday after we do the indie review show. We had our guest Gary Hodges on to do his guest review of Tardi's World War I, and it is awesome. I definitely recommend go on YouTube and you can just look up indie review show. That'll pop up with our channel, and just make sure you're subscribed and you check out that episode. And if you want a different way to get there as well, you can also hop on going to irsagency.com and just kind of check that out, because it's a pretty stunning book. Gary's just asking for the link. Hold on, let me send him the link again.
Yeah, that book was great. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning, and I don't want to give too much away from it. But I just sent Gary the link too, so he'll probably be hopping on too. Gary Hodges of Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots will be joining us shortly, and so yeah, I mean, also just go to irsagency.com if you guys are at all curious about discovering new cool graphic novels and indie books. And here is Gary. Gary, by the way, before I put you on, I just want you to be aware we are live. So save the crazy not safe for work rants. I'm just joking, by the
way. Which I'm known for. You're right.
Yeah. I was watching a live stream the other day, and it was a bunch of comic book creators, and as a joke, one of them just showed up without a shirt on. He had the body of a comic creator. It was amazing.
That's hilarious. I felt a little weird. So I've been doing these little, daily vlog videos and stuff. And I wanted to do one where I just showed my exercise routine, but I literally can't exercise with the shirt on because it's the Antelope Valley. It's hot. It's like Arizona kind of weather here. Yeah. And so I had to film myself shirtless, and I put it up, and then I was like, I hope people don't think I want them to see me shirtless, because I look terrible. Right. I look awful shirtless, but at the same time, it was like I did think it was important, because I talk all the time about the rowing I do and the weightlifting I do. It's like very mild, but I thought it would be helpful for anybody like me who has never worked out in their lives, So
yeah, I have only recently come to the conclusion that as an illustrator, artist, animator, whatever, I don't need a six-pack. I am a 41-year-old man who is married, and who do I have to impress? I don't need a good body. I need a body that works and feels good, but I am not posing on magazines. I'm not an actor. There's no reason that I should beat myself up for being a slightly overweight guy. So I've ceased to care about it anymore.
I hear you. I am 46, and I've changed any kind of goals for my body to just be functional.
Yeah, that's basically mine.
Does my back hurt or no? Does my knee hurt or no? That's the very basic kind of expectation I have now.
So Jake Twister is joining us in the chat, and he said, "So long as the carcass moves, it's gold."
Yeah, pretty much.
I definitely have a similar thing where it's like the only reason I even started exercise was just necessity. Where it's like with the commute I do and the amount of work I do and the lack of sleep that I get, if I don't at least do a bare minimum of exercise, I just pay for it. So it's more about avoiding pain by temporarily going through the pain. That to me is the only thing. But
it's something they don't tell you about getting older, that you will be working out just to not be an invalid.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that you need it. Use it or lose it is a thing, guys. I hate to say it. If you're out there and you're 25, start building habits now. It sucks.
Yeah, and honestly, it's good for your mental health too. So for me, that's a good check because I'm prone to depression. So it's like if I work out, it's like it's way less likely that I'm gonna have some like weird bout of depression or something. Idaho Star is joining us as well. How's it going?
What's up, Kendrick?
Yeah. Idaho is now following me on Twitch because of Cory. So thank you, Cory. By the way, we're streaming to Twitch as well.
This would be my Twitch debut then too.
Yeah, yeah. I have like 7 subscribers on Twitch. So, wow. Although the gaming that Cory is doing might help with the Twitch audience.
Yeah, what am I watching here? I can't recognize what game I'm seeing.
This is Rocket League. It's
Rocket League. Okay. All right.
If there were a shame drug of choice in my life, it would probably be this game.
Yeah. Cory, I think it's like Rocket League and yogurt are like your 2 fixations.
Yeah. Yogurt?
Yeah, he's a yogurt maniac.
I don't drink or smoke or do any drugs or anything, and so frozen yogurt specifically.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
I can understand that.
But I'm all about actual yogurt too. I could actually talk about yogurt for an inordinately boring amount of time. So
Cory's like, don't get me started on yogurt. Let me tell you about the GERT.
I'm getting that sensation.
I at one point in time I bought a pressure cooker so that I could begin making my own yogurt.
You use a pressure cooker to make yogurt?
You can, yeah.
Wow. That's very.
I feel like we made yogurt in a college biology class once.
Nice.
Yeah, you have to start with the culture.
Yeah, there's something I remember it was terrible. It was awful. Yeah.
We learn something new each day. I want to know the recipe for some good GERT.
I will tell you that homemade yogurt defeats the purpose of yogurt if you want it to taste good. Like if you're doing yogurt for why did we start talking about this? If we're doing yogurt,
I don't know, but the chat's encouraging it. They're like, let's talk yogurt.
They just want to get him spinning. They just want to see what happens.
If you're eating yogurt for like the biological, stuff, the good biomes, the gut bugs and all that, then homemade yogurt is excellent for that, right? But it tastes like death. It's not good. You have to add so much. I mean, store-bought yogurt is not really actually yogurt. In most cases, like some Greek yogurts are, some of the popular brands that are Greek yogurts are, but
this is hilarious. Like I thought you were joking. We were like we're gonna get really. Cory's gonna be able to tell you everything about yogurt, and wow, already I'm learning a lot.
Yeah. Cory is a yogurt aficionado.
To truly be a yogurt, you need live cultures. So
yes, welcome to my TED Talk. Yeah, in the comments here.
There we go. Okay, I just want to say that I have an obsessive learning personality, so it's really hard for me to know something and not know all of the other things about it.
Yeah, I understand that. I have a similar thing.
The same affliction. Yeah.
So. It was really hard when you were talking the intro to Tardi's World War I, and I was like, I know some things about World War I, so I was just like,
really?
I had to hold back. I don't know tons, but it's like definitely, a war that was pretty heavily designed for profit.
Absolutely, and with almost the most tenuous justifications. Was pretty much just like, it's been a while since we've gone to war. Why don't we do it?
And they had no idea what they were getting into either. So they were just like initially thinking it was just going to be like your typical front war where it's like, you dig in, you like shoot each other, and they didn't expect that like
some people medals, like it's all good fun. And that difference though of industrialization.
Oh, totally.
It just changed everything.
There's a scripture in the Old Testament that talks about it was the time where kings should have been at war. When it's talking about David not being in the right place because he was watching Bathsheba. So, I mean, back in the olden times, there was like a season, like fall, winter, war. It was when we should be at war right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that sounds about right. Yeah.
Human culture is very messed up.
But that was like the first war where like one battle and you'd have like 100,000 dead. just one battle, and people were just stunned by it because they were just like, how does that even, like, because they didn't, like, they just started introducing machine guns, like these really primitive versions of machine guns and these giant shells, and then there were no restrictions on like the gases used in war, which is like some of the most horrific stories you'll ever read.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then what really, as horrific as it all, and that was another thing that was interesting about reading this and listening to that podcast and kind of getting educated on World War I was, I think it's way more, it's left more of a cultural scar on Europe because we weren't really involved, you know, like, and that's, it's like, why don't, you know, I remember when I was first learning, it's like, why don't I know all this? Like, this is like, I know every weird random detail about World War II and I know hardly anything about World War I. And I think it basically boils down to, because like America wasn't really involved, you know, so like, but for Europeans and obviously for the French, like World War I is a big deal. Like they think about it, talk about it. And it affected their national identity. So that was, I think, part of the fascination for me, was to learn there's this whole world of things I didn't know anything about. But as bad as it was, what really left like the indelible mark, it seems like, was how the sides decided to carve up the world at the end of the war.
Yeah, that kind of paved a lot of future problems.
Exactly. And that's what I was alluding to, like when I was like, almost every problem we have in the West today, you can kind of trace back in some way to World War I.
Yeah.
There was some weird thing where they're like, all right, well, this country is ours now, okay? And like that just ended up being a problem for 100 years afterward.
Yep, you know? It even spilled over to a lot of the conflicts in the Middle East. Like a lot of the modern conflicts in the Middle East, like originate from World War I. It's insane how much warfare like sort of dictates like the global climate for, you know, years to come. Hopefully we never have another world war, you know, like I just hope that never happens again.
Hopefully. But yeah, it's
but it's also just fascinating, and it definitely would be an interesting, like, you know, the artist in me is like, I can understand just like from a cold, disconnected standpoint, how that would just make for really interesting material to write about, because it's just so high, such high emotion. You know, it's like, it's hard to kind of stray away from the wars if you're going to write historical fiction, you know?
Yeah, no, I will. And I think it's also an opportunity to talk about experiences and choices and moral dilemmas and ethical dilemmas that you would never encounter outside of war or maybe a philosophy classroom.
Yeah.
You know, like a thought problem that's totally abstract. Like those are the only two places you're going to be able to kind of even imagine these scenarios. You know, it's just in normal life, you would never have to think about these things.
Yeah, it's pretty well put. And C.S. Lewis, who also like fought in war, but he wrote in the Screw Tape Letters, one of my favorite ones is, I'm going to blank out. I think Screw Tape is the demon that's the apprentice, right?
I thought so.
So the expert demon is like, Screw Tape's all stoked because he started a giant global war, and he's like, haha, like everyone's gonna like turn to Satan now. And he's like, no, you don't, like, that's actually the one time, like if that's your goal, like you actually want everything to be peaceful and great, because nobody's thinking about like heavy philosophy,
right?
You know. But at wartime, that's like the ultimate time for people to actually start questioning purpose and stuff, because it's like, it literally is just humanity at its worst, like on a field. Like you just take all the worst possible traits of a human being and just put them on display in like, you know, red versus blue kind of scenario.
Right.
It's a trip, but yeah, what a cool book. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I hope at least a couple people out there are like, oh, I got to check this guy out. Like, and like I said, even if not the World War I one of these other ones, like they might find something that's kind of fun.
Have you read Sergio Tappi, Gary?
I have not. I'm familiar, but I have not.
Yeah. You might enjoy that. It's not as
make a note.
It's not as deep into the human condition, but and the artwork on the surface looks drastically different. But I feel like you would enjoy it.
Cool.
Very, very more like less literal and more ethereal kind of compositions, but similar things. There's one called The Collector, where it's just this guy that goes around and collects these artifacts, and so it happens all over the world. But he has one of the things I didn't point out about Tardi that reminded me of Toppy is like a lot of mainstream comic book illustrators nowadays, all of their men look like the same guy.
Yeah.
All of their women look like the same girl. But like in a lot of those shots, you had a lot of differences.
Yeah.
They looked like different people. And that's something that Toppy does really, really well.
That is something I could have, if I had more time, I might have mentioned was, I mean, that's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, is one example I use, and I want to make it clear to anybody listening. This guy is an amazing artist. I would be lucky to carry his luggage. I'm not saying he's bad.
Right.
But something that bothers me about Alex Ross, all his men look like the same dude and all his women look like the same woman. And like the only difference between Batman and Superman is Batman has a cowl on, but they look identical. Clark Kent looks like Bruce Wayne. And like that, and you see that also like, drawing things the Marvel way or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it drives me bananas. And whether people like or don't like V versus M, I think if they read it, they would say absolutely, like, these are all individual characters that you cannot confuse for somebody else.
Yeah.
That just is my little pet peeve where it's like, no, if I'm going to draw someone, I want it to be an individual.
Yeah.
Like, not just comic book guy, So I appreciate that.
I think that's a thing worth aspiring to, because it's like, it's definitely a weakness, and it's hard to break out of like young art students. Usually there's a breed of like young art students who will be doing sort of like what they consider manga, but they aren't paying attention. Like Jake's actually a good example of it done right. Like he's sort of experimenting with manga, like he's in the chats right now, but his characters all look like different, like when he draws his characters, they all use a different template. And so I think that's sort of a good thing. And it's probably because he's pulling from actual like manga as opposed to like how to draw manga books, But it's like, but there's this certain look of like a lot of young students when they first, at least when I was teaching, it's like, it was really frustrating because you'd have these students who thought you were criticizing them for liking manga when you were trying to critique their bad template that they're using for every single character. And they'd change like, the villain would have like glasses where you couldn't see their eyes through the glasses. But it's the same exact character, but they're like blonde or something. Right. With the same hair.
Like palette swaps.
Yeah. And then the women they draw were the same template, but they just had like a short spiky haircut or something. It's like, I think, varying your template and kind of representing different characters is it's not that it's necessary, but it definitely helps. Like, I think when you're talking about trying to have an artistic voice,
Well, I think another thing is I think when people are learning, maybe it gets hammered too hard into their heads, this idea of, all these like cheap proportions, like, oh, the nose lines up here with the ear and the eye, like this kind of like, this is how a face fits together.
Yeah.
And that's great to get you in the ballpark. But then when you're talking about individuals, none of that's going to be like exactly right. Like that's where that's good training wheels, and you should learn all that stuff. But at some point you need to realize now there's a range within this. And that's how you start coming up with an individual.
That's like one of my biggest problems with Andrew Loomis.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Loomis? Yeah. Anyway, he even says in his books, he's like, people are this many heads high.
Yeah.
Superheroes are this many heads high. Like, it's actually not, he's like giving he's like, I've just watched that like superheroes are drawn according to like the Greek ideal.
Yeah.
You know, which isn't reality.
Yeah.
but then the ironic thing about it is like there is a formula to it. Like it's like here's the formula for these characters, and if you follow this formula, then it'll look like Superman, and if you follow this formula, it'll look like Wolverine.
Right. Which is a great thing to learn, but like
right.
it's another of like a million examples of like, you know, learn it to the point where you know where to kind of disregard.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I really dig Sam Keith and artists like that who kind of brought their own style to the superhero genre, because it's like you never mistake like Sam Keith's Wolverine for like someone else's Wolverine. Like it's very much his own distinct stylized character, you know. I definitely also think it's just sad because it's almost like if you learned, you know, structural rules to English and then you were so bound by those rules that you missed out on the whole language available to you with writing, you know.
Or you read Saves the Cat.
Yeah.
And you think that that's the only way to tell a story, that you have to actually have, you know, certain things happen on certain pages, which is what that book says. It's like on this page of your script,
this should happen.
You should have the turn into Act 3, and it's like,
which, to be fair, like, you know, and to kind of back up that we're not all being super critical. It's like that formula works. Like we both like Cory and I were obsessed, and I think you like it as well, Gary. But it's like The Mandalorian was just like an epic piece of television. But if you break it down, it is Save the Cat. Like it's like to a T.
I mean, and to the point where I was at, even though I loved that series beginning to end, like I was starting to get a little impatient, you know, with this like over reliance on like what's trying to eat the baby now, you know, like, I mean, it's kind of like, okay, but that part of that I didn't hear a lot of other people express that complaint, and it could be because I've read Save the Cat. I've done some writing. Like I can see the matrix here, guys. I see what you're doing. Off. Like, you know, like, but everybody else was sort of like, I thought it was great, you know? So it's like, well, maybe it's an example of like, if you know how the sausage is made, you start to, the luster is.
Well, and it's kind of like, you know, do you get mad at the Lion King for actually being Hamlet? Or do you just know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
And it depends on how well it's done. Like for me, Mandalorian doesn't bug me as much as other formulaic shows that try it and just aren't that good at it. And so it's like, I think even in the case of using the same template, like that could work in theory. It's just like you have to really do it well. Like a good case in point of that would be like Akira, right? It's like, it's brilliantly illustrated. It's amazing. And yet that artist, I cannot tell the difference between the men and the women, between any of the characters. And they're very beautifully drawn, and like seriously, the guy could draw me under the table. But still, I can't tell much of a difference between any of the characters. Like, who's Kaneda again? I mistook him for his girlfriend because they're the same template. Like
face.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So, you know, it's like there's masters who pull it off, but yeah, I definitely like when there's variety. And I think a really good example of somebody using a similar template, but like tweaking it, would be somebody like Charles Schultz, where it's like he's using a really simplified template, very similar, but he gives enough distinction between the characters where it's like just at a minute's glance, you can tell which characters are which.
So, you know, it's funny. Josh, I know you've been doing this. Like, I've been doing Doodle a Day this month, and I had to do one of the prompts today. I drew Linus, and so
nice.
I Googled, like, Google image search Linus large, and like put it up on my browser and was just drawing and looking at it. I haven't tried to draw Charles Schultz in years. I think the last time I did, I think I threw in Snoopy's Doghouse, had like a little cameo in D versus M 1975. And I think years before, like every once in a while, it's like I'm, for some reason, you know, like it's like I'm drawing a Charles Schultz, but it's been a few years. And I was sitting there looking at Linus and trying to draw Linus and realize every time I try to do this, I realize like this guy, like, is a master. Like, it's just great. Like, and you just don't realize like how it seems so simple.
Yeah.
It seems so basic, like anyone should be able to draw this. And you look at it and you're doing yours and you realize like, why does this not look right? And you look at his again, it's like, and you're seeing all the ways you're getting it wrong. And you wouldn't even think something that simple could really be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many, actually, if you get it wrong, it does not look like Linus anymore. I went through, I think, 2 or 3 attempts at Linus before I got one where I was like, this is okay, but it still doesn't look as good as his.
Yeah.
Because there's just this quality that I just can't quite, and I got to move on now. I have a day job, man. I can't sit and draw Linus all day. So
I think
Jake in the chats is bringing up one of my biggest complaints as well, is Sean Gordon Murphy does this really bad, and he is one of my favorite illustrators. But yeah, it's like he moved on to doing Batwoman, and you're like, oh, there's his female doctor character from like Punk Rock Jesus. Now she's, Catwoman, or now she's, Harley Quinn or whatever.
I don't know that one, but now I'm going to have to Google it later because I'm curious.
I will be presenting some of his work later, but have you read, he started indie and then went mainstream and then went back to indie and then is mainstream. And anyway, his run on Batman is called White Knight. And
yeah.
And he anyway, it's like one of the few modern comics that has like gone into like multiple printings like over and over and over again and gained readership, each month rather than lost. But yeah, I agree with Jake. Like reading like Punk Rock Jesus and Cafe Racer and American Vampire, like a lot of those same people.
I'm reading his. Yeah, I get that.
Yes, the Girl from the Tokyo Ghost.
Yeah,
The Doctor in the Wake. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He did a bunch of really good books. And anyway, yeah. Then after that, it was like, oh yeah, I see that. I see that person.
No, I see. I mean, I'm glad that we have like it seems like with a lot of our tribe is here with that thing. For all of them, I prescribe more life drawing classes, like more portrait classes. Like, I mean, I don't know like how to cure you of that other than like you need to start drawing individuals and not just human, Yeah.
Cory, you had a question. Idaho Star was asking, do you play controller or mouse and keyboard?
Oh no, mouse and keyboard is for horrible demons. There's no controller all the way.
Oh,
You're saying that on Twitch? You're coming out strongly against
the flame war.
I'm also
these opinions do not reflect the opinions of this channel, by the way.
You're
they reflect
I'm saying that as a PC gamer as well. So
wow.
Yeah, Xbox controller is the way to go. I say as I totally get owned and scored on right there as I'm talking about.
You're the hottest takes in the after party.
Right. Yeah, controller for Rocket League. I can't think of a game that I would actually enjoy playing on the keyboard. I hate it. I hate keyboard gaming.
And he said KB plus M in that game. I don't even see. I'm so much a non-gamer that I don't even know what that means. I'm imagining that's keys.
In his defense, in Cory's defense, I can't imagine playing this keyboard mouse. Like, I will say that. Now, if he was playing a first-person shooter with a joystick rather than keyboard mouse, I think get ready for the hate mail. But,
yeah, I understand that. I am glad you brought that up about Schultz, though, because it's like he, especially his early work, is just like stunning. And I think people should take another look at Schultz. Like if people like kind of grew up like watching the Charlie Brown cartoons, or they're familiar with like the later in life style with like the really wobbly lines.
Shaky line. Yeah, which, by the way, that's what one of the things I had trouble emulating today.
Yeah.
Because I realized, and I kind of gave up on it, where I was like, I'm not getting this shaky line right. So mine is kind of a very clean looking, not authentic looking Linus. But
I love it. But I love both styles, but I would say look at like the 1950s stuff when he first launched Peanuts and when Snoopy looked like an actual dog.
Yes.
It's
walk on all fours.
It's unbelievable how skilled cartoonist Schultz was, and then like even considering that wobbly line style was like developed when he was having hand issues, so he couldn't draw without wobbling his line, so he just kind of adapted with it. It's just amazing.
It's so great. Well, to me, I like it's an example I bring up. And it's so hard to do. I mean, I honestly believe like you have to be sort of a master to be able to pull it off. To be able to have a very, what seems at least superficially in a lot of ways is a very simple style, but one that's versatile enough where there is nothing you can't draw in it is an achievement. Like that is something hard to do. That's something that I don't think I could do. I don't think that's something most artists could do. Even some very good cartoonists could do it. But like Schultz, Watterson, or like, there are people who are like, there's nothing. It's like, well, this doesn't work in my style. Like there's no way to draw this and make it look right. Like they can draw anything in that what looks like a very limited, basic approach.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are like big Watterson fans and just discount Schultz, it's like, again, like just read Watterson.
Yeah.
Because Watterson, a lot of the groundwork, the foundations of his style are based in Schultz. Like
it's totally peanuts. Yeah. Like, I mean, you can see, that absolutely. I mean, I haven't read any interviews. I'm assuming he would note Peanuts as one of his biggest influences. I mean, I can't think of any other comic that has more of that kind of, not just the look of it, but also the melancholy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's just like, I can't think of any other comic strip in a Sunday paper that he could point to other than Peanuts. But
yeah, and the fact that he never kicked the ball, like never, like,
is that canon? Never once? I mean, I believe it, but
I believe so, because it's like I think Schultz said, like, before he passed away, people were like, "Are you gonna have him finally kick the ball?" And he was like, "No, that's his character is never gonna kick the ball. Like that's the point." Like,
I hate Peanuts so much. I can't even tell you. It's like I just think it's the worst in childhood behavior.
It is.
They're terrible. They're terrible. He's like, it's funny. He's kind of, I was thinking about it the other day when I was watching the Weekly Planet, that podcast. They have anyway, they were going over all the Spider-Man movies. They were re-reviewing all the Spider-Man movies. And they were bringing up the very first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And they were kind of bringing up how everyone sort of inexplicably hates Peter Parker. And there's no clear reason, but just everybody just detests this guy, and we just accept that going forward. Everybody hates Peter Parker. Okay, fine. He's an idiot. He's a nerd. Everyone is like mean to him. I was thinking like it's kind of the Charlie Brown thing. Like everyone's just mean to this kid for no apparent reason. Like, I mean, he's never done anything that you've seen, but it's just everyone has just agreed like, oh, he's an idiot, and they're just going to be rude and nasty all the time to this poor kid.
Yeah.
What's funny too is like I remember a couple years back I got really obsessed with noticing like group sitcoms, like most sitcoms that have multiple characters are pretty much Peanuts. And this was like, I think a script I was writing or something for a potential comic, and then I abandoned it. But it was like we were going to write just taking all of the characters from Peanuts, but just doing them in a different story and not giving away that it's the characters from Peanuts, but just using all the different character types and relationships.
This will be the cheat sheet. Yeah.
And I remember when I was doing that, I just started, I don't know if it was just me overly reading into things, but I was like, pretty much any story with a large group of friends is Peanuts. It's all Peanuts. It's crazy. Once you start looking at it. But
it's funny. This is a total it's not a completely random leap, but it reminds me of the first time I heard someone trying to explain to me that Gilligan's Island that everyone on the island represented one of the 7 deadly sins or something like that. That was the whole, so like, the Howells, like Mr. Howell is greed and Mrs. Howell is sloth. And like, and so like, but it goes down the whole list. Like the professor is like, he's
Pride, maybe.
What's that?
Pride or
yes, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they all, and I forgot, I think Gilligan was the exception. The argument was, and this was, I mean, it's just one of these stupid things that you'd hear pre-internet, but it was like Gilligan actually, he breaks the model. And it's because he's actually the devil. That's why his shirt is red. And he's keeping everyone there in hell, like punishing them for their sin. Like that was the whole thing. Totally changed how you watch Gilligan's Island for the rest of your life. It was just amazing. Like I was just watching every time. Skipper was gluttony, of course. Like, I mean, they all represented something.
That's like the original Star Trek, as all the characters are id, ego, or super ego.
Oh, that's right. I remember hearing. Yeah.
So you had Bones as id, who's Bones and Scotty, and then you have I can't remember. Ego is Spock, and then Jim is super ego.
Super ego, yeah.
Yeah. So there's all the Freudian stuff. And then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's like parallels just in the structure of writing and writing compelling characters, that sort of make
like,
that kind of
intentional. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
I love that though. I love that kind of thing. It's fun to kind of think of like the subtext in stories. I don't know. I adore that. So I think so how is Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, the next one, coming along?
It's coming along. I like I said, I'm trying to write the next 2 scripts. I'm just starting writing the script for the very next one, which will be set in 1979. This will be the first thing that will be apparent to casual readers that it's not going to go chronological. Because I started with the very first one in the whole timeline. And the last D versus M comic I'll do will be the last one in the timeline. But after this, it's gonna hop all over. So next one's gonna be 1979, and then I'm gonna hop ahead again. It's gonna be 2001. As I've been working on them, I've kind of been thinking of like, it's a 6-issue arc. And I've been thinking of them in pairs. So like the first 2 was sort of like, well, okay, I wanna do like the Men in Black view, and as a companion piece, the next one will be a civilian view, like someone who's so people who are completely inside versus completely outside. For the next pair, it's another thing like that, where it's like I've kind of figured out like, well, what's the other half of this story? And that will be the next one. So I kind of would like to burn through and completely finish both scripts and even get like notes on them and get like kind of final drafts before I start drawing the next one.
Nice.
I don't know. That just feels right to me. But I would like to be drawing the next one sometime this year. I mean, that's the plan. I feel like that's very doable. I think I'll have a working script for the next one. Certainly, I don't know, sometime this summer. So
yeah, it's always hard with writing. It's like you can kind of set deadlines, but you can't fully predict.
If anyone has watched my videos, I did for 97. I did a couple videos on the writing of 97, and I could have basically made like a 5-minute supercut of me sitting down at my webcam and saying like, all right, I think I finally got it. I think next week I'll have a draft. And then like a week later, like, all right, I had to change some things. Like I'm thinking in 2 weeks I'll have a draft. And then the next one, like, you know what? I just had to throw a bunch out. Like, and like months go by where like, if you go to the beginning, I was like, yeah, like a week or 2, I think I should have this. So like, I've given up the prediction game. Like, I'm not going to try and attach it to dates or timelines.
Yeah.
I just think summer is a safe, like, I think I'll have a script this summer. I have a pretty clear idea of my story. And this time, I said this to you guys once before on Artcasters. I'm sticking to this. The first one was sort of fun and difficult because it was the first time I ever did a comic. The second one was mostly difficult because I just found doing another comic really difficult. Like,
yeah, you knew what you were in for then.
yes, it was just brutal, and wanting to one up myself, like really like, all right, like I showed I could do a comic, now let's get serious, and that like kind of frazzled me. This next one, I really have decided that, well, the next rest of them, it's like, you know what? I am really just going to enjoy the creative process. I'm going to have fun with this. I'm going to be diligent. I'm going to be serious. I'm going to hold myself to account. I'm going to have deadlines like I usually do. But I'm going to just enjoy this, because the reason I'm doing this at the end of the day is because I love it. And I need to get back to that sort of creative zeal. And so far, so good. Like, I'm still feeling good about it. I'm excited about the stories I'm coming up with. I don't want it to be a slog like 97 kind of was toward the end.
Yeah, Jake said you've been bitten by it. You can't quit it now.
No, like, it's funny. I think more and more about, with the first one, it was like, well, I'll do this one and maybe that'll be that, And with the second one, it's like, I'll do one more. Like, because now I know what I'm doing. I want to do one more. And now I'm at the point where I think about like the rest of them, like, and like how, and where do I want to end this? And what will like the last page of the last one, what like is kind of, what's going to be the button on this whole thing? And, like, so I realized like, yeah, I'm stuck. I got to just see it through.
Yeah. I understand that though. I like what you're saying about process though, because it is funny, because it's like I kind of tend to hate the process as I'm doing it, or have in the past, and then just kind of forget and do the next page because it's so fun to get the result. But I do agree. I think, especially like, I mean, you've experienced this too. Once you have one of the books out, like once you've completed one, there is an element of like kind of thinking back on the process and being like, that was actually pretty fun. Like, there's certain parts of the process that you're kind of hating in the moment that like you don't necessarily have to like view as a negative. It can be like kind of a fun experience, like going through it. And I think like a good case in point is like there's a lot of really successful artists that, especially bands that I've read interviews of, where they get to the point where they actually miss the chase and the whole process of trying to kind of climb and become like the biggest band or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so like for me, it's like I definitely don't want to miss that, like the actual joy in that process. Not that I'm going to become the biggest cartoonist, but just the joy in the process of creating, rather than, not enjoy it while I'm doing it and then later be like, why wasn't I enjoying that? It's pretty fun,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we've all used that kind of childbirth analogy a bunch of times. Like, it's a little bit like, you're miserable. It's like listening to women talk about it, where, they're like miserable when they're pregnant, and then, having a baby is terrible. But then like, a year later, they're kind of like, maybe I'll have another, like there's something, I mean, that's the only thing I think it's sort of like, but I think when I'm in the zone, it's sort of a flow state, and you're realizing that it's the process that's joyous and not so much the having of the thing when you're done, and that's hard. And I think sometimes it does get swapped. Like, I remember that first time I held one of my comics, The Proof, printed in my hands. Like, I was totally overwhelmed. And like, I was just thinking like, I want to chase this feeling forever. Like, this is what it's all about. But I think it's the process of the second comic that made me realize, like, not really. It's different. Like, that's also a special moment, but you've got to be finding the joy in, like, it can't be about the model on the shelf. It's got to be about building the model. You know, it's got to be like, you enjoy clipping the pieces free of the sprue. You enjoy gluing it together. You enjoy sanding the seams to, to make it all blend. Like, that's what you've got to be loving. If you don't love that, it's like, why even do it? Like, you know, and
well, there are people that pay people to put models together for them.
Right. Yeah. Which I don't even, yeah. I mean, it's like, I understand it better with models, especially, at least I did as a kid. I built plastic models all the time. I would build them. I would make them all perfect. I would paint them, put the decals on. And then like 2 weeks later, I'd toss them and build another one, you know, because like I enjoyed that part. I remember when I was in high school, I would draw things. And when I was done, I didn't have a portfolio. I'd be like, well, you know, like, I don't know, hang up on my wall for a little bit. And then I was like, well, I'm tired of looking at this. And I'd throw it out. I threw out drawings I wish I had today. But I think my teenage self kind of had a more Zen wisdom about it, you know, where it was like, no, the fun is the drawing.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, not the like, look at what I did. Like, that's a weird thing to get kind of lost in, but
still to this day remember so I think it was like when starting in like third grade, I would have a friend over to spend the night, and then I'd be like, we should just stay up late and like, you know, here's the latest issue of of Spider-Man or whatever, so let's just draw the cover of it. Yeah. And they'd be like, that doesn't sound fun. And I'm like, no, come on. Like, it'll be amazing. Great. We'll stay up and we'll make this like, and I remember just like having so much trouble finding anyone who would connect and be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's stay up all night drawing. Yeah. And it's like, now as an adult, I forget that joy too, where it's like, I'm staying up all night drawing. That's fun, but it's like, it's easy, especially, and I think this is the thing that, it's like that, it's one of the downsides of like kind of doing it for a living is you can kind of forget the joy of the process on your own personal projects. The other thing is like, it is work. So it's like, I think the model example or like the working on a car or something, it's like,
right.
There's a lot of people who work on cars for fun, and that's not easy work. That's a very frustrating work. You could spend hours, like months building an engine that just isn't going to work, like rebuilding it from the ground up.
I don't know about you, but every guy I know who's nuts about like working on some old car they have in their backyard or in their garage.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen them drive them.
Yeah,
like
that's so true.
Not about that. It's not about like, and someday I'm going to, take it on the highway. Like no, they're lost in this kind of the joy of like looking at paint chips and finding weird little parts that they're going to swap out. And, well, now, I could go back and make that, like that could be something better too. And like, that's what they're enjoying. I think that's, like I said, I think that's kind of like when you're in the zone, when you're appreciating it,
Yeah, that's something I've been doing a lot lately with music, where it's like, I've been working on like a new album for fun, and the first album was fun. I mean, it's just the whole process is literally for fun with like absolutely no intention or objective. Like even like when I have a friend locally and we play in when COVID isn't happening, we play bars and stuff like that, and it's a pretty fun weekend. But even that objective is gone with this, where it's like, I don't even think I'm going to do these things live. I'm just making these things because it's fun. Yeah. And trying to make them good just for the sake of like trying to make something cool that I love and other people don't necessarily have to like. And that's been interesting getting in touch with that, because I definitely could see a need for me to kind of shift my perspective on comics to kind of fit that. Although obviously I take my comics a lot more seriously and there is an objective with those. It's still like, I think you really make a good point. I don't know, Cory, do you find yourself like sort of feeling that way with like animation and stuff, like where you can kind of like lose the fun of the process itself?
Anytime somebody pays me to do it and then I have to do what they say, that's where I go every time.
Yeah.
In fact, I have one of the coolest clients right now with this music video. And several times I tried to like, I don't want to say I tried to get rid of her, but I didn't want the work. And so I was like, instead of giving her what I think she wants, I'm going to pitch what like I would do if I wasn't getting paid anyway. Like, what is the coolest thing that I could do with this that I would be like super excited about?
Yeah.
And she ended up loving it. It's like her song, it doesn't really match this vibe, but it was like, I was like, I just had this idea in my head of like, I really like junk ships, like the Chinese junk sails where they have these bars that separate the sails rather than have them sewn and have them controlled with ropes. They have these fixed position bars. And there's a very distinct pattern to them. And I just thought it would be really fun to do an airship that was swimming through the sky with these junk ship sails. And the airship was a mixture of like British and French Navy tall ships during Napoleonic era and like a fish. And so like the placement of the dorsal fin and the underbelly fin and all of those fins would be these Chinese junk ship sails. And so I literally built an entire pitch off of, I just want to make an airship that swims through the sky. And it got weirder from there. Like there's all kinds of weird stuff from there. And the client was like, I love it. I love that you went like really edgy and weird with it. And I think it's great. So now I'm doing that. So that's kind of cool, And I mean, like, but anytime I try to give somebody what I think they want rather than something that I want to do, immediately I'm like, oh, I hate this.
Yeah.
That's when I start trying to like sub it out and like I'll still maintain or whatever. In those cases, the money has to be really good or I have to be really hard up.
Yeah.
Because I would just much rather, because I mean, like if you're working on your own project and you feel like it's drudgery, I think you should do something to your project.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I totally agree.
Yeah, 100%. That's like that. Yeah, you're working on the wrong thing. I mean,
I told this story. I've told the story a number of times, but like I was in my first comic, which I have hopefully completely erased from the internet. I was doing this web comic, and it was like page after page after page of these talking heads, and it was all this exposition, and like I was so bored drawing it that I just had a bunch of harpies fly in and like shoot Sidewinder missiles and destroy everyone that was having that conversation because I was so bored with the conversation that I was like, all of these characters are dead now.
Yeah.
This is stupid.
Yeah, I was going
He's like, it was this weird little comic called Game of Thrones. I don't know. I just
yeah, I don't know if anybody, I hope nobody's seen it, but no, I came across, oh God, it's so cringy to talk about. But in my defense, I was probably in like 7th or 8th grade or something. But my favorite video game was Strider, which was this like Nintendo game and an arcade game. And I loved it so much, I sort of did like a weird fan fiction comic book about it. And I stumbled across it when I was cleaning through, like going through some portfolios. So they had a bunch of them just stacked under my bed that I hadn't looked at in forever. And man, it was terrible. Like, oh God, it was bad. Like, just so bad. And I was like, no one can ever see this. And if it wasn't just for the weird historical curiosity of it, I probably would have tossed it. But I was just like, look, this is just going back in a folder. Like, no one's ever going to see this. Like, maybe when I die someday and they're cleaning out my house, like, then they can see it and who cares? But like, until then, like, this just is going to be buried like the Ark and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, no one can see this. This is so bad.
That's
I love
funny.
that.
I have the PDF still. I think I've sent it to Josh.
Yes.
But
it's not bad for a first attempt. It really isn't bad for like a first attempt at a comic. It's much better than most people's like kind of attempts, I would say.
I was 32, so I hope it would be better than most people's attempts because most people attempt at like 12. So
I think it's time to put it on the internet so we can all judge. I
think you should post it up on your on CoryCur.com.
Tell you what, once Indie Review Show gets 100 subscribers, we will release the Cory Care comic. I think that's fair, right?
How about once Indie Review Show gets 10,000 subscribers?
10,000. Wow.
10,000.
That's
wow.
It's gotta at least be more than my normal YouTube channel.
If it's 10,000, then I will release my graphite Strider comic from age 13 or 14, whatever that was. So
I kind of want to check out the Graphite Strider comic. At some point, I would like to post the comics that I did as a kid. Although I do reference them in 2 stories, and I actually redrew pretty authentically a lot of the characters that my friend and I created, and it was really fun to kind of like look at all those old characters. And
you still have all those?
I have a bunch in my garage that I have to kind of thumb through and find, but they were all drawn on like line paper and stuff. And yeah, I had like an art box that I've kind of kept around. So
I have I've sat on them forever. So my best friend in high school, Jason, there's no way he's watching, but just in the off chance he is, shout out to Jason. The thing that we did, we were very popular. You can tell. The one thing we did is it started, I think we had some class together where like for a joke, and I don't remember who started it, but one of us was like, psst, and passed a note to the other guy. And when it opened it, it was just like a little stick figure pointing his gun like right at the viewer. Like it was just like that. And it was just like, and that was just the stupid thing. Well, and then that escalated, drew a thing of like someone shooting the stick figure guy and passed it back. Somehow this evolved into this dueling comics. They were like multi-page stories where like he was the star of his and I was the star of mine. And we were like these arch nemesis, like doing, they were like full comic books going back and forth where I think the longest one ended up being like 25 pages or something. Like these were like super in depth, and all our friends who were equally popular which is not at all, where like they would be like, oh, when is they were called Note Wars, and I was like, when is the next Note War out? When is the next Note War out? It's like I'm working on it right now, a couple days, and you'd show up at high school with this stack of like the latest comic, and they would all get read and like rah, and then like it was Jason's turn now. He had to write a reply. The only requirement is you couldn't just ignore whatever happened in the previous one. You had to somehow deal with it and like, write the story going forward. So it was a lot of fun. I have no idea if they hold up at all, but I still have them all in a box.
Oh, nice.
Closet. And I've told him for years, I was like, we should look at maybe doing something with these. Like maybe we could publish them just as like a weird gag and like write our notes as grown-ups now, like these stupid things we did, or like do like a little YouTube thing, sharing them or something. And he's always been like, no one's going to give a shit about that. Like that's like, no one's going to care. No, like we're the only people who are going to find that interesting. I was like, I don't know. These could be kind of funny. I still believe there's potential in the Note Wars. So maybe that's another thing. When there's 100,000 subscribers to IRS, I will release all the Note Wars for all your enjoyment and pay Jason no royalties.
I think that's great.
I actually like am really fascinated with the idea, and this is something. It's funny because it's like this also ties into just like enjoying the process of your work. It's like having to do these pitch pages, which is a stylistic shift, and it's like this totally different thing. For like 5 pages, I'm on page 4, and I'm just like, I can't wait to get back to this graphic novel I've spent years on, because it's just like, something I'm making to do. But one of the things that I would like to do, potentially when I'm done with 2 stories, book 2, I've been trying to get somebody, like I was talking to Scott Cirkland about this because he had some hilarious and amazing characters when he was a kid, that I feel like if you took the comics you wrote as a kid with like the authentic, like don't change any of the pacing or the text, just draw it, like draw the hell out of it. Like draw it with like every skill you've got in your body. Like if there's like a scene in a city, it's like this perfect perspective, like whatever happens, just be true to the like 11-year-old who wrote it.
I love it.
I really want to do that. And if no one takes me up on it, and I know there's like Axe Cop, where it's like that guy had his like younger brother, I think, write it, or his kid.
It was his younger brother, yeah.
Okay, his younger brother wrote it, and that's cool. But I'm like, this is literally like a collaboration with yourself. Like, give the 12-year-old you like the best illustrator, that you've now become, like to see their vision come to life. I just think that would be hilarious. So
I have thought, I remember it was years ago, but I remember it like when everyone was talking about the Star Wars special editions, I did think about like, what if I take the first multi-page one we did and do like the special edition where like, I'll draw it as well as I can now. It's like 4 pages, and like, but I'll just do it, but it'll be, basically the same thing, but just, it's the same that's why I'm totally on board. I love it. I love the idea.
I also like that, that concept actually could be pretty funny because it's almost like spy versus spy, but like illustrator versus illustrator. Like that could actually be pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's like an Exquisite Corpse comic or something,
I wanted to do an Exquisite Corpse animation for a long time. This is going to be weird, so I'm just prefacing that from the beginning. I have to go through my pantry and find food that will sound like bones when I break it. So I'll be back. I have
pasta. I just listened to some interview with the Foley guy.
I think pasta would be good. Celery is good for breaking bones, but I want like clinking.
Oh, clink. Yeah, I think if you have big pasta. Yeah.
Okay.
Rattle. Yeah,
that's a fair point. Yeah, or like you could actually just, if you have like spaghetti noodles, if you just crunch spaghetti noodles, like a bunch of them, that'll make a nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was the one piece of feedback that Wacom gave me was they said it looks great.
Those bones do the
Let's get some sound.
Let's hear those bones.
Yeah,
that's so. One of my favorite videos I've ever done is that Foley video that I did for Put Your Heart Into It.
That is a great video, which you guys can all check out at CoryKerr.com, or just look up for Cory Kerr's YouTube channel, Cory Kerr, and it's pretty damn good. It's got like Cory playing with celery and making all sorts of strange sounds with odd household objects. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pepper, because in that short, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's on Cory
Put Your Heart Into It. Yes.
/ animations. But he reaches into his chest and pulls his heart out of his chest.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he does that, I broke a pepper because they're like those big bell peppers. They're like hollow.
Oh.
And every time I've been in an audience watching that short, everyone cringes so hard. So it's great.
Yeah, and what's hilarious on the video, and I really recommend people watch that Foley video too, is like Cory does Foley with like intense concentration, but he's doing something like absurd, like squishing a bunch of bell peppers,
taking a potato masher and just
really focused. Yeah,
but just like
a big citrus.
Like the most serious, like just focused expression.
I have never thought of
Adam Laurie said, I love it when you call me Big Pasta.
Nice.
I think that was a Notorious B.I.G. ref right there.
That would be interesting.
I'm hip to the hip hop.
That was entirely convincing.
I was trying to sound like the dad age that I am now. It's like there comes a certain age where no matter how much of a hip hop head you might have been as a kid, you can't pull it off.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be back. I'm going to bow out of the stream, but I'll be back. I'm going to go rummage around for some pasta.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think we're at about the hour mark, so I might need a wee little coffee break and stuff like that. So,
Josh does a fluid level adjustment every 60 minutes, no matter what's going on.
This is 100% true. I need my coffee.
Makes sense. I will probably bow out and, well, Are you going to go off air when you do your coffee, or are you just going to be away from keyboard?
He just leaves it up.
It's literally like a 90-second break. But once again, you are not under any obligation to stay because
I'm just picking a round number. I'll hang out for 20 more minutes and then.
All right. I'll be back before 20 minutes then.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, wait, does that mean I have control right now? Am I the only person? I can do whatever I want? Oh boy. The power, the possibilities. What is something just completely dumb I could do to waste time here? I want to show you all with this amazing opportunity one of my most prized possessions. It is. Oh gosh, he's back.
I was hoping you would use it to either crassly promote or say something.
I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do with this opportunity and power, and I decided I was going to show off my blue masking tape.
Actually, masking tape like that's painter's tape, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, painter's tape, man. You cannot have enough of that, especially if you're doing.
I use it all the time. I use it to tape up recipes in my kitchen on the cupboards so I can look, like they're at eye level when I'm reading things. Doesn't leave any gum or stickiness on the. It's pretty great. I used it to mount a camera tonight, so you could look at the Tardi book. So
100%, which is on the IRS agency.com, which you guys should all check out. And Jake was saying to play spoons. Oh my gosh. If he's going to play spoons, I think we're from enough of the same generation to where you hear the word spoon and you just think of that terrible song, Spoon Man.
Oh, God. Anyway. I had actually somehow blocked that out. But no, I think, that was absolutely my generation. Yeah.
Anyway. And there's literally a music video of an old man playing spoons. And that was probably the worst of the 90s. I don't know. It's interesting because I have these moments where I actually miss when pop music wasn't terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wonder if I've just aged out and have just started viewing most modern pop music as terrible.
So, like I feel like every generation kind of feels like ours was the last one that had decent music. So I'm reluctant to try and but I absolutely have that impulse where it's like, wow, music now is trash.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't even.
Yeah, I just remember
when Stone Temple Pilots, I had completely written them off as just like weird Pearl Jam wannabes. Do you remember that? Do you remember their first album? That's kind of exactly what they were doing. They were trying, like when you heard it, you were like, is this Pearl Jam? It's like, no. Yeah.
I remember I hated Bush. Like I thought that band was terrible. And in retrospect, I'm like, they weren't great, but they weren't bad. It's weird. It's like there were just bands that I thought were the worst bands ever. Compared to what's come.
A good example of that, wouldn't that be Nickelback?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's like so cool to hate on Nickelback, but like, are they bad? I mean, have you actually heard a bad band if you think Nickelback is bad? Like, have you been in a shitty dive bar and heard like some terrible people playing for the first time? Like, and you're going to call Nickelback bad? Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not saying they're good.
This is a hot take, Gary. You're defending Nickelback.
I'm not defending Nickelback. I'm just
hardcore contrarian right there.
We have to be aware there's a whole range here, guys.
That's true. There is a range of suck, and I guess
it reminds me. I don't know why I think about it all the time, but it somehow infected my psyche. I remember I was overhearing a conversation once somewhere where there's a bunch of guys talking about basketball. I don't know anything about basketball, nothing at all. Don't care about it.
That's whenever I always feel like an anthropologist hearing people talk about sports. I'm like, okay, let me listen and try to figure out, like, maybe it'll click. Maybe I'll understand this thing more.
Yes, that's the spirit I was overhearing this. That was one of my favorite things before the plague. Most of my life was like, I have no problem eating out alone. Like, I don't feel like that's weird at all. Like, I enjoy that. So like,
it's actually really fun.
I will totally eavesdrop on like all the conversations around me. So if you've ever seen me eating alone somewhere, like yes, I'm listening to your conversation. But these guys were talking about basketball, and one of the guys was really bagging on this particular player and saying like how much this guy sucks. Oh, he's the worst. He's the worst. He's the worst in the NBA. He's just terrible. I could beat him one-on-one. And this other guy, everybody stopped. And this one guy at the table was like, no, you could not. And he's like, look, that guy does suck. And he might be the worst in the NBA. But the worst in the NBA is better than anybody else you're going to meet at some pickup game at the park. Like, so don't even kid yourself. Like, he is amazing. He's just the worst of the NBA.
Yeah.
And there is something about that where even though I didn't know anything about basketball, it's like there's a lot of wisdom in that. And that's my thing about Nickelback. Are they one of the worst known bands? Probably. I don't know. But are they bad? No. And like, could you play better than them? No. Like, I mean, let's be honest about Nickelback. You know, do they suck? Yes. Are they the suckiest? No.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. And actually, that's one of my pet peeves with people who critique like sports players and stuff. It's like, I'm not a big fan of sports, but yeah, you definitely often hear that from sports fans where they're just like, I could play better than that guy. And it's like, no, you couldn't. And if you could, you'd be making millions. Like, you're not.
Oh, it's like, great when you hear them talking about MMA, where they're like, oh, I would have kicked it. Like, that guy, I can't believe anybody's getting their ass kicked by that guy. It's like, that guy would murder you. Like, you would actually, they'd be filling out the toe tag for you right now. You know, it would just,
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things that I think it's probably the same thing that drives people to like not really see the work in art, you know, where they just be like, meh, you know.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily seeing the work involved behind it. Or people who kind of have that attitude about art where they're like, well, I would have been an artist too, but I just blah, 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 you know.
Right.
They're kind of casual about it as if that were an option for everybody. But it's like, it's not. Like, it requires like massive amounts of work and dedication to get there. And then maybe you're fortunate enough to make a living doing it, you know?
Right. Oh, if you want to, I
do think there's that, like, you know, it's, I kind of understand it because I'll feel that way when I listen to like people debate philosophy, where I'll be like, oh, I could get in on that discussion. But I'm fortunate or unfortunate enough to have some friends who like teach like ethics and philosophy at the college level. And I would get destroyed, like demolished in a debate with them because that they dedicate their life to it. Like, anyhow.
No, it's my girlfriend is a classical musician. And if you want to see her face twist up and contort, have someone say to her like, oh yeah, like I played, you know, whatever, insert instrument here in high school. And they said I was very good. They said I could have maybe ended up in the symphony. Like it's this thing of like, sure, you know, like, I mean, it's like this lack of recognition of the gap between like, maybe you know a little bit about it, or maybe you're kind of, but like, and actually doing it and actually performing at a high level and actually going all the way. I mean, it's the equivalent of like, yeah, you know, I used to be pretty good at free throws. Like I maybe I could have been in the NBA. It's like, you don't know what you don't realize how crazy you sound.
Yeah, 100%. And also to be in like, to be in a major symphony orchestra is not like a high school band, you know, where it's like you have a new draft every 4 years. Like, you know, and you also have like, like 5 or 6 high schools within like the area that you live, and there's 5 or 6 high schools in a different area. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, but it makes me I kind of understand it in the sense of like, just the idea that I think when people have a lower idea of what they're talking about, they tend to kind of think they have more expertise in an area than they do.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Whereas
what is the name? There's
ironically, like your girlfriend would probably be the first person to admit she's probably not the best, right? Because she's surrounded by brilliant musicians. And then if she goes next to like the LA Phil or like the New York Phil, like it's going to be different. And like, there's different levels and there's different like, and the higher up you get, like the more you're going to be aware of like these proficient, like brilliant people to where like you have a more realistic view of like where you're at. Cause when I was like,
if you're doing comics, like the more you do comics and learn about comics, the more you start to recognize like, wow, like whatever, like I feel like your self-appraisal almost necessarily goes down the more you know about something.
Yeah.
You just start to appreciate, how big the field is here. And
100%. Yeah. And also like
that's what I was looking for, Jake. Yeah. Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah. Yeah.
100%. I think I had that, and I think this is pretty common with artists. Like I was the best artist at my high school, at the time I was going to high school.
Yeah.
And then I went to a junior college and I could say pretty handily and not like cockily, like I was probably the best artist at my junior college in the Antelope Valley. Right. So I remember when I transferred to Cal State Long Beach, I had gotten accepted in an art center. I just couldn't afford it. So I went to a state school. So I'm like, these guys have nothing on, and it became like the first critique from, this young, like 20 something kid who's like, just moved into the city. And I'm like, I'm going to destroy all these artists. They're the best.
Yeah. Right.
All it takes is like one or two critiques and just an objective look at all of the best kids from their high schools.
Yeah.
In a room, all of the best kids from their colleges, all of them hanging their stuff on a wall. And you're like, oh, I don't stack up too well because this is an ocean, not a pond. Right. It's like, I think that's a good realization that's going to happen when you try to pursue becoming an expert in something, which you're never going to be.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, I'm sure you probably get that all the time too, where it's like, you what you do for a living is like a very niche thing that I'd imagine just by doing it on its own for enough time, you gain certain knowledge that like somebody who's just an illustrator probably doesn't have like the knowledge of like biology and science that you've acquired through what you're doing and through experience of doing it. And like, so it's like, I'm sure if somebody could just draw really well, they'd just be like, yeah, I could do that. And then like, they'd probably be pretty buried, first week or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's actually like some of the challenge they've had in filling these positions when they've come up in the past is like, what are you looking for? Because it's so nichey that the odds are is you're not going to find someone who's actually done it. So you got to find someone who has experience where somehow you can see something there in the resume where you're making a educated guess that they would work out.
Yeah.
Even though they've never proven it because they've never had that job before. And yeah, it's tough. But what you were talking about before, that's absolutely the same experience as me. Like I was always the kid who could draw. Like that was my identity through grade school and through high school. And to the point where I have to admit, I'm not proud of this, but it's been a gazillion years, so I can admit it. I kind of took it for granted and was a little heady about it. Where like I remember in high school, some teacher saying like, I can't wait to someday open up like the political cartoon page and see a Gary Hodges cartoon, like in the paper. And I was actually kind of pissed off because I had it in my head, like I can do other things. And like, this is just this thing I do. And like, yeah, I'm good at it, but whatever, man. Like, I don't know. I had this weird kind of rebellious attitude about it where I just didn't want to be identified in that way. I was so spoiled by this identity that I was like, I'm over it now.
Yeah.
And yeah, then you get to college and you start taking some college art classes. And that first time it's critique day where you're pinning your work up on the wall with everybody else's. And then you really start to get a feel of where you are. And I saw, like, I'm not at the bottom of the bell curve.
Yeah.
I'm not at the top either. There's like I have things that I could learn to do better, and that's a tough thing, I think, for young artists once they finally realize, like, I think almost every artist graduates from the kid who can draw, who's better than anybody they know. And all they've ever heard from their friends and their family their whole life is like, you're amazing. You're so talented. Oh my God, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to do what you can do. Like they've filled their heads with this stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're in a room where, like, it's all kids who have been told that.
Yeah.
And they're pretty good, and some of them are better than you, like that. Now that's your first little test, I think. That's the threshold, the Campbellian threshold of, like, all right, where are you going with this? Are you going to say, like, screw this? This is horrible. Like, I don't want to have to fight to be good. Yeah. Or some people will be like, well, I need to start bringing my game.
But it's kind of like it's the difference between, because I similarly, I feel like I almost had I been good at sports, I would have been one of the, like, jocks that I really hated, because I was as cocky about my art as a young man, and pretentious to other people, including jocks, about my art, where I was just like, well, that's my thing. And that's what I own everybody at, Right. And I remember it being a very competitive and, like, almost like just a weird testosterone contest for a really long time as a young man, and like it is really an interesting lesson when you start swallowing your pride and, like, looking at the people who are better than you and sincerely trying to kind of up your game. Mm-hmm. And because, like, the natural byproduct of that is, like you were saying, you start discovering, like, when you're first reading comics, you can be like, yeah, I'm better than this artist. I'm better than that, because you've read, like, 4 comics. So it's like, but then you stumble upon something like the Tardi book that you just showed us, like, today. And it's like, how can anyone look through that and feel like they're competent as a cartoonist?
Right. Or, it shows you there's a whole nother level that, I'll be honest, at least personally, like, I'm not even aspiring to. Like, I feel like this is where, like, this is the Michael Jordans up here. And I just want to be a decent baller. I don't need to be Michael Jordan. And I don't think I can be Michael Jordan. I want to be decent, and that's fine.
My goal, like, I would be happy to be the worst player in the major leagues, and
right. As long as I'm in the arena, like, I get to sit on the bench. Yeah. Like, I'm there. Yeah.
I think that's so valuable, but it is fascinating how that, like, that's a hard learned lesson. And I have to admit, like, I also think it's almost necessary at the beginning of your career as an artist to have a little bit of, like, idiotic over trust in your own abilities and maybe a little bit of delusion, because like, I still to this day, like, will look back to art that I was initially, even in art school, like, I felt like I was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I think for the age I was at and the class I was in, like, I was up there. But none of us were there. And I had no business kind of sending out some of the portfolios I sent out. But some of those landed work, and I had no business getting that work. And it's kind of interesting, but it's like, I think some of that delusion is good and almost necessary, but it can just become so toxic if it is lasting and I don't know, like, I've met some pretty brilliant artists who just are really full of themselves, and they're really hard to work with, and they don't tend to get hired back on teams. Yeah. And then you meet artists who are, like, good and humble. Yes. And, like, they always get hired back. Yeah. Because, like, nobody wants to work with a bunch of cocky people.
No. And, like, I'm sure there are some out there, but I have never met an artist who's like high on themselves like that and like cocky and like brash and just like, you know, I'm the shit, who actually was good enough to justify that attitude. And I like, so like, I mean, and like I said, there might be someone out there. There might be some crazy artist who's like got a long beard sitting on an island who's amazing and will tell you that like Paime in Kill Bill, like he'll tell you you're an idiot and laugh in your face, and he actually is the best. But in my experience, I've never met that guy.
Yeah, I would love to meet that guy.
And it makes you more disgusted with them when you see their work, when you're like, this is totally unearned. This is like the unearned confidence of youth or ego or something. I don't know what it is, but it's not, your work doesn't justify this attitude.
100%.
And like, it makes me think, I bring it up every chance I get, but it makes me think of that Neil Gaiman thing that he gives this commencement speech where he's talking about the 3 things you need to be successful. And I probably already said it on Artcasters, but for the benefit of the people watching tonight, like, I just think it's so valuable. I find it so true. The 3 things you need to be successful is you need to do great work, you need to be on time, and you need to be a pleasure to work with. But the secret is people will settle for any 2 of those things. So you can be late all the time if you're a delight and you do great work. You can do mediocre work if you're a delight and you're always on time, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like any 2 of those will work. Like they'll accept that, but 3 are best. I think that heavily weighted is like, are you a pleasure to work with?
Yeah.
That will almost forgive all sins if like people enjoy working with you, you know, and where like some of the other ones, like I've never known someone who was good enough to overrule the fact they're an asshole. You know, like and again, maybe there's someone that good out there where it's like, look, you just got to suffer this idiot because he's amazing. Like I haven't met that guy yet. But if people enjoy working with you, if it's like the classic Dale Carnegie, like they feel better, like having had an encounter with you as opposed to worse, like that will take you much farther than any other thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I do want to preface this too by saying like, this doesn't mean just be a pushover at your job and like, no. You know, like no. sometimes, unfortunately, like, you know, professionally, you kind of have to be an asshole sometimes. And that, you know, that's somewhat necessary to some extent. But like, if you're a person people dread working with, you know, like, why would you be surprised that they're going to cut ties with you if they have the opportunity to?
Even if you are on time.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
That. And I used to do my previous job. I was a supervisor of a graphic design team. I did a lot of hiring. And I can tell you, and I wasn't the only one who felt this way. All the other people who were doing hiring, the number one metric you would think about when you're interviewing someone, you're looking at their portfolio, you're asking them your questions, you're looking at their resume, whatever, they're listening to the questions they have for you. The main overriding question I have in my head the whole time when I'm hiring is, can I sit next to this person for 8 hours a day?
Yep. And also, you know, when you're in a supervisory position, like 90% of what you're considering, like the Tardi comic, is morale. And it's like,
yes,
if morale dips, like everything's lost,
right?
Like, in leadership.
Is this person going to be a pain? Right. Is this going to be, well, and those were the issues as a supervisor, that kind of like the Tardi thing, that was always a high priority. If you hear that like someone is doing something that's like they're gossiping or they're doing something that's upsetting other people on the team, or this person's microwaving their fish leftovers and gassing the lunchroom or whatever, like that's the shit you need to take care of. Because even though it seems small and petty and stupid, and it kind of is, that stuff actually has a massive impact on whether people even want to be there.
Yeah, 100%. So it's like, you know, when you're interviewing, it's like you could see somebody with a brilliant portfolio, but if you're like, this person's going to piss off every member of my team and make their lives suck going to work. Well, what's more important, like the team you have or this new recruit, right? So it's like, I think that's something, it's a good window into like things that honestly, when I was not in supervisory positions, I may not have even considered, although I'd like to think that I've never quite been a complete asshole to everyone I work with. But it's like, it is one of those things that, especially having worked in supervisory positions, it makes you way more conscientious of how super important that is. Like, but I also think that goes to comics too. You know, if I'm at a convention and I meet somebody and they're kind of a jerk and they have a really cool looking comic at their table, I'm not going to buy that comic. Like, you know, but if I meet somebody where their comic's like meh, but then they're really nice, I'm like way more likely to buy their comic.
Yeah.
You know?
No, totally. So I've bought comics because I liked their pitch. I didn't even like the book. I didn't even really want to spend money, but I just thought their pitch was kind of funny or good or whatever. And I was like, all right. You know, and it's something that, I don't know, doesn't get talked about enough maybe, but.
So Gary, are you going to, after, you know, vaccines get around? I don't know if you've had your second yet.
I have had my second.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It'll be 2 weeks post second Friday.
Oh, that's so cool.
So look out, it's orgy time. No, I don't know. That
was exactly my question. Was
where you're going. I assumed that's where you're going because I know that's sort of your thing, and I just wanted to. Yeah,
exactly. No, it was more like orgy of nerds at comic conventions.
Right.
So
I was all yes.
I was curious if you are going to be doing conventions like at all, like if they start kind of opening up again.
You know, it's funny. It's something I suggested to Scott in the comments in our Artcasters a couple weeks ago. I had a similar. We were at that same Phoenix convention. What would have been, I guess, 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, where we both kind of mutually, independently were like, I think I'm done with this convention stuff. Like, I feel like there's better places to apply my resources, and I don't know if it pays off for me, and it's just a lot of stress and money and work, and I can't really tell if it's like paying any dividends. So I'm gonna put my efforts elsewhere. And we both, Scott and I, if you got us going about like what's wrong with conventions now, we could probably do a 2-hour.
Easily.
Yeah, easily.
I'd probably agree with most of it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know there's people who would strongly disagree. Like I know Dan Ika still believes in conventions, and like there's people I know who like they're still Scott and Keith, the guys in the Indie Review show that I was telling you about, like that's where I met them, was at the convention, and they love conventions, miss conventions. So that's just me. But this experience, and maybe I'm just talking, you know, it's pandemic like isolation brain or something. Having gone through this, it's like that sounds kind of fun to go and do a convention. Like I can't believe I'm saying it, but like
yeah, I'm kind of there. So I will say, as things start opening up and stuff, we should touch base just in case I ever end up, you know, deciding to cruise to like an Arizona one or something, because maybe we can split a table. Because I think I have a suspicion like you and I would take up about as much table space.
I could
need a massive
table. And honestly, if I could split a table, that would probably be enough for me to be like, okay, yeah, I'll do it again. You know, it's just like the idea of doing a whole artist alley table, and every time, and I've been lucky compared to some people. Every time I've done Comic-Con, I've at least broke even, which not everyone can say. And it's not bad if you lose money. I mean, there's an argument to be made that it's about visibility. It's sort of advertising. And you always pick up followers and things. You make some new contacts, and you can make some great new fans in person at a convention and lose money. Like it's kind of worth it, you know? But I've always been lucky enough to either break even or make like $100, you know, something like that. But when you realize it's like weeks of prep and so much stress and so much energy, like when you do that a few times, you're like, I don't know if this is worth $100 and like 15 new followers.
Yeah.
But if I could split a table, I think, now it makes more sense. Like that's kind of the approach I'm going to take, is trying to kind of partner with friends and stuff who are in comics already and don't really need a huge booth space. Because like
my goal is just to sell one book. Like I have no other, like I have no objective to be there. I'm not there to sell posters. I'm not there to like make a crap load of money because like I already have a job. Like I don't need, I just want to push this one book and get more people aware of the one book. I will say, prior to that, like the one thing conventions were always great for me back when I was full-time freelance, I would definitely recommend doing conventions for people who are running their own business, because you can pick up, like I picked up some really like high-end clients just out of happen circumstance at multiple conventions, that like I would not have been able to email, but they just came to my booth. And just by having those promotional materials with like a business card and stuff like that is very lucrative when you're running your own thing. And so I definitely would say if somebody's freelancing and they have wares to push at conventions, definitely look into it. And once again, the thing we were talking about with being a jerk or being nice, make sure you're nice to people, because the person might be like an art director for a huge magazine or publisher.
You never know who you're talking to. And that's something that you guys have touched on many times in Artcasters. It's like if you've brought it up in the context of like bad mouthing people. You know, talking about like, oh, this guy's a real, whatever. It's like you don't know who you're talking to. That could be this guy's best friend. This could be like their collaborator. Like, who knows? Like, you be careful. Just be willing to deal with the consequences of whatever you're saying. The reason I believe this so strongly is because I have made horrible mistakes in the past, speaking too freely.
Yeah, me too.
Like, oh, just terrible. And I still feel awful about it. But I think the lesson has been, don't say anything about anyone that you wouldn't be 100% willing to say verbatim to their face. And if you're willing to do that, then all right, go crazy, like, I mean, I would hat in hand tell Alex Ross, like, I love you. I think you're a great painter. You're better than I'll ever be. Clark Kent looks like Bruce Wayne, but I would say that to him, and he could say like, well, who the hell are you? And walk off, spit in my face. It's fine. But I would say it, like, I'm fine putting that out there. But if you're not willing to put it out there, don't say it. Yeah.
And I think, we mentioned this on our McKay episode because he's such an intimidating artist and practically invented animation and comics, and did more in his lifetime than any of us will probably likely ever do.
Yeah.
But dude was a little racist and also couldn't draw word bubbles. So
yeah, there you go.
Take that.
There you go. That's right. Take that.
I can confidently say that my lettering looks not header lettering, but my interior, like, paneling lettering and my lettering in my word bubbles are easily better than Winsor McKay's, which is not like the cocky, unspoken, like young art student thing. I would say, I think all three of us are better letterers when it comes to verbal lettering, like in panel borders or whatever, than Winsor McKay.
Yeah. Yes.
So take that, 1908.
That's right. Right. And let's see, what is Jake saying here? Hodges secretly wishes to be spat on by Alex Ross. Let me tell you something, Jake. That's a story I would tell for the rest of my life. So in a way, you're not wrong.
I know a dude who, now I'm going to forget his name. The guy that invented Deadpool. Can't draw feet. Why am I blanking on his name? Liefeld.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember either.
Liefeld. So he was.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, the Captain America drawing guy. Yeah.
Right. He was at a signing at a local comic shop, and Liefeld asked to borrow his marker, and never gave it back. And I've heard him tell that. I don't know him well. I bumped into him a couple times.
He gets
I've heard him tell it 4 times.
Yeah.
I've probably bumped into him 5 times in my whole life. It's like that's his story. That's his Liefeld story. He was wronged. He was out 1 marker. Anyway.
So I have changed my perspective so much on Liefeld because of just his, at least, I don't know him personally or anything like that, but his Twitter and his way of handling the criticism against himself has had like a Shatner effect for me, where I'm like, I kind of like him now.
Well, that's what I've
also
heard, is that he's very like self-effacing. Like he's very easy about like the whole thing and can make fun of himself and kind of charming. That's what I've heard. I don't really follow him, but
yeah. And the other thing about him that makes me a little less judgmental is the age he was at when he was working at such a high level, because I'm like, I could not draw, like, if you look at those like X-Force pages, and it's like, now maybe that's not like super impressive, but if I was like 18, like I couldn't draw like that.
Is that how young he was?
Yeah, he was like, he's a teenager, you know?
Yeah, that allows you. I think that's an important point. Like, yeah, I didn't know that. I never.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally a kid, you know, but I think he was like I think maybe like 20 or something when he was in the Levi's ad. So it's like, this is like literally like a very young artist.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's a young artist.
I have to admit, I'm very familiar with like that, in particular, that Captain America drawing where people have gone in.
Yes,
like,
it's so bad.
You know, like it's, and like I've seen that, and yeah, you know, it's pretty hilarious. But, and I'm just saying this because it's 12/16 and like, who cares? But like, I have to admit, I never thought much about it because, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit older and this almost touches back to the music conversation. I kind of thought all 90s comics looked like shit. So yeah, like, I agree. Was like, well, par for the course. Like, I didn't really, you know, I was like, I don't know. They all look weird to me. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that was the era of comics that like initially, you know, the first early Image stuff, like I was really into like McFarlane as a kid and Sam Keith. I think those were like my two ins for like Image. And then of course Jim Lee, because like Jim Lee's X-Men run was amazing. And I remember being really just mind blown by that. But then like as I got older, I just started realizing they felt really formulaic. And in the 90s, the one great thing that was coming out was like early DC Vertigo. So you had like Preacher, you had Sandman, you had Shade the Changing Man, you had like these comics that were coming out that were just weird and awesome. And that just kind of led to this whole dip into the underground. So it's always mystified me when people now, you know, like I'm impressed. Like one of the things I like about the Indie Review Show is like Cory follows a little bit more mainstream comics than I do, not like tons more, but like even the Image stuff, I've gone so far underground, I barely pick up Image books anymore. And so it's like, it's been really cool to like learn of stuff that I've lost touch with because of that whole like dipping away from the mainstream, you know?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great indie stuff that's come out that's a little more mainstream than I'm aware of. And it's like, it's good. So, but what's interesting to me is also seeing people freak out and lose their minds over comics being like, they're like, these comics are divisive. They're using this just to sell books. I'm like, yeah, that's what they
want to sell books, right? Like,
that's kind of what they do.
I mean, there are a whole bunch of books that went out of business. If you're interested, and you know, I mean, you can look them up. You can find them.
So that's always mystified me, is like people being horrified that stories about people wearing spandex fighting crime are formulaic. Yeah, it's like, I mean, come on, guys. You know,
there's superhero comics. Yeah.
Yes. Anyhow, but I love it. All right. Well, I have managed to get my panel done. Cory, nice. Do you feel like we've gotten a good hangout in?
Yeah, I'm just trying not to deaden everybody's ears. I have a pile of hangers, plastic hangers, and a couple brushes, and a bowl of broken ramen noodle. And so I'm getting some good sounds.
Boy, I kind of feel like if you had some wire cutters and you chopped up that plastic hanger and threw it in the bowl, that to me, in my mind, my mind's ear seems like rattling bones to me. But,
yeah, I also have like, you know, just a bunch of pens and markers.
That's good.
So
that's pretty good.
That could, yeah. Now I'm looking around just.
You know what's funny is like I think Gary might have access to actual bones.
Actually, I don't know if rattling my skeleton will make any noises, but I don't.
If you want the authentic sound, Cory.
I know, right?
Let's see here.
Oh, I want to tell a story about a skeleton that I can't.
If we
That
can
has to
walk
do with
for
the book.
the clothes tonight, we'll walk him over. No.
That does sound.
I don't know.
Oh, that's perfect.
That has a good.
Yeah.
It's the metal and the plastic bone kind of.
Hey, do me a favor and record like 5 seconds of that.
I can do that and send you. Yeah. All right.
Email it to me or something.
I love this real-time solutions for folly. Sometimes the authentic source is actually better. And I will say, for anybody watching the stream, did you guys think you'd be getting like not only a cool sneak peek at Cory's animation, which you can check out on Cory's channel? He just did this cool animation for Wacom, but not only that, you've seen sneak peeks of a animated skeleton hand, and now you've seen a close-up of a skeleton hand. We deliver here.
The one thing I was a little disappointed about is Wacom was like, they were like, "Hey, this is great. We're gonna keep it for Halloween. We'll play it during October." And I was like, I think skeletons and skulls are like they don't fit into a category, a holiday.
Yeah,
they're omnipresent.
Yeah, they're evergreen. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I can.
I can understand it from a marketing.
I get it. I get what. Like, if I was there, I would say like this will be perfect. But that's forever away. That's going to take forever.
So now I'm thinking, I'm putting on my marketing hat. And I'm like, what's the second one going to be that could actually be something that they play soon? But I don't know.
I would aim for some 4th of July thing.
Ugh. All right.
Yeah, I noticed. I liked that too, Jake. I like that look at him just kind of. It's like he wants to be. It's like a pet that wants to be fed or something. Like
or he's just kind of like observing you. Like that's a good shape of skull. I think I could take his place.
Right behind me, isn't he?
I think what's going on in the chats is pretty rad right here. Jake actually said Night Gang and then was like, "Oh, wrong show." That's our little late night live stream thing.
I'm with Chris. See, there's a skeleton inside of us every month of the year.
That's true. And sometimes our skeletons come out, and that's the dark note where we will end. No, I'm just kidding. Chris also said he met Liefeld, and Liefeld was cool. It was a positive interaction.
He's a cool guy. I'm not going to hate on Liefeld. I don't.
I think like hating on Liefeld is one of those like really trendy things to do.
Yeah, I used to do it though. I mean, I do remember there was an era where he was really like highly respected, and like I think the catch is, and I think this is like kind of tying in with the whole what's that terrible band that isn't Nickelback. That terrible? So Nickelback's a good example too, where it's like it's appropriate to crap on Nickelback when they're played in rotation all the time on the radio. Yeah. But there comes a point where it's like punching down instead of punching up.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's
when they're popular making money, okay. Yeah, right.
Like another good example was like Creed was a band that needed to be made fun of. Speaking of Pearl Jam ripoff bands,
really did. Yeah.
And I love that the sound of those bones, Cory, is amazing. Oh wow, I love all these noises.
Oh man, I'm gonna mute my microphone again so I don't gross everybody out.
I love it. All right, and then Chris was so they're asking about cons too. All right, well we have a pretty active chat and stuff like that, but we have been going for like a good 2 hours. I think Gary has to work.
I do. I should go to bed. I do.
Yeah. And I actually have work early in the morning as well. And Cory's got a lot of crazy, awesome folly to record
Before I leave, I will do a quick little voice memo recording of the jostling skeleton and get it to you.
I love it. So Gary, thanks again for being a guest on the Indie Review Show. It was really cool. It's a really beautiful book too that you showed. So everybody should check that out on the Indie Review Show. It's very good. And then Chris was saying he did a podcast about missing conventions, which is true. It's a really good podcast. Sketchboy01. Am I wrong, Chris? I think that's the correct one.
What's the name of the podcast?
No. That's the podcast. I can find out in 2 seconds if Chris doesn't answer because I just saw his post about it and listened.
Always looking for a. Thank you, Jake.
I know it's here. Wait. I was looking at his page and I think it was under Kitten Rivet, which is the company with his wife. Crossing. Okay, Convention Crossing, yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yes, and it was for Kitten Rivet. So Kitten Rivet, really great to follow on Instagram. And now we're hearing strange, awesome noises. I love it.
Oh my gosh, that hurts my hand so bad.
So Cory's like, I need some authentic sounds, just crunch. All right, and so
when you break down top ramen to a certain, like where everything is about 1/4 of an inch, it's all just sharp things stabbing you in the hand as you break it more.
You know, ramen wasn't a bad choice, actually. It's a pretty good one for Folly, too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so anybody out there, also check out Chris K's Convention Crossing interview for Kitten Rivet. It's pretty good. And Chris, actually, of all the people I know, I would say he's one of the guys who, like, I've literally convention next to the guy. He'll have, like, a massive line, and it'll be, like, right next to, like, William Shatner doing signings. And he'll have a shorter line. Not that it's actually Shatner, but point is, I've seen him, like, get these mass lines at conventions just from being there with really cool art, with a great setup, and also just he is so, like, such an expert at engaging with people in like a non-carnival barker way, but at the same time, like, very engaged, and it's like watching a master at work. So I definitely recommend that.
It's a skill. It's a skill.
It really is. I need to get better at it, being the social anxiety fellow that I am. So all right, so I guess that'll call it. But yeah, again, check out the Indie Review Show. Gary did a lot of work, like taking notes on Tardi's World War I, and it's cool. You get a sneak peek at something that I think I'm gonna have to buy.
I think it's worth it. I think it's a special thing, and like I said right off the bat, if you care about comics, you care about the art of comics, you should check it out. I think you'll love it.
I love it. And then
thank you again for letting me guest, guys. It was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's always awesome. Cool.
That was super fun.
All right. And
good after show.
Yes. One last time to check out Cory's Wacom tutorial video. It's like him making an animation for Wacom, and it's officially for Wacom, and it's pretty cool. All right. And that'll do it. So we will see you guys. I'll probably see you guys on my vlog or on a live stream like tomorrow. And we'll see you guys next Monday. And Gary, we'll see you again, I'm sure.
Sure. Yes. At some point. So, yeah. Cool.
I love it. All right. Bye, guys.
Catch you later.